Hello, everybody. Welcome to the TriStar Gym channel. Please give me a thumbs up and let me know that the sound is working loud and clear. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the chat room. Today, we're talking about a fight that I've been waiting for. Thank you, Isam, for letting me know giving me a thumbs up, letting me know the sound is good. Guys, today we're talking about a fight I am ultra excited about. Ultra excited about. Charles Olivera is going to be fighting Islam Makhachev this weekend. I wanted to do this breakdown 3 weeks ago. Just too busy, guys. Too busy. Lots of things going on. And I'm finally here the week, Monday, taking the night off to talk to you guys about Islam Makhachev versus Charles Olivera. Guys, I'm going to give you my pick for the winner. My pick is Islam Makhachev. I told you guys the last year and a half that I think Islam Makhachev is the number one 155 pounder after Khabib. There's Khabib and then there's Islam Makhachev. And Islam Makhachev has finally now getting his title fight. And I think it is way overdue. Charles Olivera has been on a tear. He's had 14 or 15 straight wins in the UFC. He's been in the UFC maybe 12, 15 years, 12, 14, maybe 14 years. He's been in the UFC for over 10 years. He's been super active. He fought at 145. He fought at 155. I've been watching his career develop throughout all these years, and now he's at his prime, and he's winning fights. His last fight wasn't an official title fight because he was 0.5 over. For those of you who are not aware, he was stripped of his title, even though he had an epic fight with Justin Gaethje. He was 0.5 pounds over, half a pound over. They stripped him of the title, even though he got a big win over Gaethje. It did not count for the title. In my mind, in your mind, that doesn't matter. We all consider him the UFC lightweight champion. In this fight, I think both men are going to make weight. Both men have made weight all regularly, many times over. It won't be a problem this time around. I highly doubt it's a problem 2 times in a row. That would be insane. I highly doubt either man misses weight. It's going to be an epic battle. Now, why am I picking Islam Makhachev? What are his pluses? Now, there's a lot of pluses we have for Islam Makhachev. He's been nearly perfect with only 1 loss on his record, ever. All his wins have been pretty much one-sided. He's never really had a seesaw battle. Now, he's had a couple of tougher fights, mainly versus Arman. With Arman, he had a seesaw battle, but nonetheless, he was still very dominant, especially in round 3. He was very dominant. Islam Makhachev has been dominant for the last 20 fights. He's been dominant every single fight. He's only had 1 or 2 hard fights in his career. Every single fight, he's been dominant. And I will tell you why. It's not only because of his wrestling, but it's also because of his judo. In the octagon, he does double legs, he does single legs, he does judo trips, he does judo hip tosses, he does body locks, he does Greco takedowns. He's a master of the takedown. He will get this fight to the ground. Make no doubt about it. When he gets this fight to the ground, and he'll get this fight down to the ground in a multitude of ways. If Olivera throws a kick, he's going to shoot a double, exactly like he did to Hooker. If Olivera tries to tie up in a Muay Thai plum, or he gets too close to try to throw those razor sharp elbows, and we all know Charles Olivera has great elbows, he's going to get tied up in those judo throws. Guys, do not underestimate the judo of Islam Makhachev. Yes, he has incredible wrestling. Yes, he has incredible jiu-jitsu. But it's not only that. He's a world-class upper body wrestler as well. He's incredible with his trips. His upper body takedowns are incredible. Suplexes, snap downs, body locks, trips, hip tosses, uchigaris, taiotoshi. He's done it all in the octagon. Watch his fights again. He does it all. He doesn't just shoot for the legs and wrestle the legs. He's a master of upper body takedowns. When he scores his upper body takedowns, it's going to be Islam Makhachev's top game versus Charles Olivera's bottom game. Guys, when punches are involved, the top game is superior. I think it's going to be a really good fight. I'm giving it 60-40 to Islam Makhachev. For those of you who've been tuning into my channel for a long time, you know I rarely give odds like that. It's usually 51-49. It's usually 55-45. It's rare that I'm so generous and I give a fighter such great odds. I think it's 60-40 for Islam Makhachev. And now let me tell you why. I think Olivera, of course Olivera has chances to win. Of course Olivera has potential to win. He has the KO power. And he has an incredible arsenal of submissions. Of course, we all know he's got the best back control, rear naked choke. He's got those long arms. And you know, a rear naked choke is just a triangle with the arms. It's just a triangle with the arms. We know he has an incredible guillotine. He has incredible rear naked choke. And of course, he's done joint locks. He's done leg locks. He's done arm bars in his career. He has a variety of submissions. However, the only two submissions I think he can catch Islam Makhachev with. There's only two. One, the rear naked choke. If he catches Islam Makhachev's back, he can finish. And I would expect him to finish. And two, a guillotine. He has a very, very dangerous... Charles Olivera has a very dangerous guillotine, a very dangerous high elbow guillotine. However, Islam Makhachev, a heavy wrestler, has been guillotined probably countless times in his life. He's ready to deal with it. I don't think we're going to see a guillotine. It's possible, but unlikely. What I do think we would see, if there was a submission by Charles Olivera, it would have to be the rear naked choke. Now, that's not an easy thing to do. Get taken down, get beat up, and then find a way to the back. Very difficult thing to do. How has he taken the back in the past? Well, he's pushed guys up against the fence. He kind of does like a double leg to a waist lock, body lock, kind of duck under like he did against Dustin Poirier, jumps on their back. Or he knocks you down silly and jumps on your back, like he did with Justin Gaethje. He hurt Justin Gaethje real bad, climbed on his back, put an effortless choke. Guys, that's not going to be the case when he fights Islam Makhachev. It's going to be very difficult to do that. Rewind to Justin Gaethje versus Charles Olivera. Gaethje drops Charles Olivera twice in round one. Twice. And every time he knocked Olivera down, he let him back up. It's not going to be the case with Islam Makhachev. If Islam... For those of you who don't know, Justin Gaethje doesn't do any ground at all. He uses wrestling to stay standing, and he wants to bang. That's it. He's got a fight standing up. It's a gunfight every time. Justin Gaethje fights are all about striking. He does everything in his power to keep the fight striking. Even if he knocks you down silly, he's not going to get up on top of you. It's not going to be the case with Islam Makhachev. The second Olivera exposes himself for a takedown, he's going to get taken down. When he does, in my opinion, guys, he's going to get mauled on the ground and eventually, very possibly, subbed. Guys, give me your thoughts. I want to know, who do you have winning? Give me the name of the fighter you're picking, Islam Makhachev or Charles Olivera, in the chat. I'm going to take a quick little poll here, guys. Put me the name of the fighter you think is going to win, and then I'm going to take your comments and questions on these fights, on this fight. Let's see here. What are you guys voting for? Charles Olivera. Champ has a name. Olivera, Islam. It's pretty 50-50. Olivera, KO. I would say a little bit more of you guys think Olivera. Okay, we got a little bit more Oliveras in the chat room. Guys, I have to disagree. I have to really, really respectfully disagree. Maybe I'm overhyping Islam Makhachev, maybe, but I've seen him up close. I've seen him in action. He's a killer. In my opinion, he's very similar to Khabib. Just the world doesn't know it. The world doesn't know it. He doesn't have the experience of Khabib, but it's a matter of time. He does have a ton of experience. He does absolutely have a ton of experience, but just not the same level as Khabib. But still, he's on his way there, and I think the Charles Olivera fight, he's going to score takedowns at will. He's going to get a takedown every round. I think he scores a takedown every round. Maybe he takes one round off. He wins the decision or he subs him. Okay, guys, with that said, let's take comments and questions on this fight. Hi, the tiramisu. That's from Etio. I'm not sure if there's tiramisu anywhere here, but I did eat a little chocolate recently. Coach, you were 60% on Usman too. That's true, and I ended up being wrong. You're right. I ended up being wrong. But to my credit, he was winning every round except one round till he got KO'd. He lost round 1, he won round 2, 3, 4, and was winning round 5 till he got KO'd. Okay, guys, let's see. What else you guys got to say about this fight? Why does Firas think Islam has superior wrestling? This isn't played out by the facts. That's from Blake Williams. I guarantee you he has superior wrestling. I guarantee you. Charles Olivera has been taken down multiple times in his career. Islam Makhachev, I think, has been taken down statistically once, maybe twice. Maybe twice. I think it's only been once he's been taken down his entire career. And he's taken down literally every guy he's ever fought. I can't think of one guy other than Gleison Tebow where it was a quick knockout. He's taken on every single guy he's ever fought. So I think if you look up his statistics, you'll be shocked about what a great wrestler he is. Gaethje didn't knock down Charles Oliveira. Charles pulled guard. That's from Scott C. No, he did knock him down, and also Charles Oliveira later pulled guard. Okay, so maybe he stunned him madly once, and he knocked him down once, and then Oliveira pulled guard. But watch that fight again. Okay, I just watched it recently. He did knock Oliveira down. Absolutely. Hey, Coach. Hi, Coach. Will this fight be dictated by who can move forward, who gets pushed back? That's from Jimmy Earl. They're both gonna move around. Look, I was really surprised when I saw. I thought that. I used to think that too. You know, when I saw McGregor versus Khabib, I was really surprised that Khabib circled. Like if you watch that fight, like he circles the first 20 seconds. He's kind of circles along the fence and he kind of backs up, and McGregor just kind of aggressively walks towards him. Like it was McGregor smothering Khabib in the early few seconds. Now the way you start a fight really could change the whole pace of the fight. Okay. Khabib circles, and then of course he does that shot. He shoots below the knee, like he does this diving shot. He eats a knee on the way. Like if you would have showed me just the first 10 seconds before he shoots, if you just show me that footage, I'd be like, whoa, this is really interesting, because McGregor's walking up to him like he can't be hit, and Khabib is respecting his forward pressure and circling out. But then you watch the rest of the fight, you're like, you know what? It didn't play. It's always good to control the center, but it doesn't mean much when the guy's such a great wrestler. Because Oliveira has a thing where he kind of runs across the octagon sometimes, and he does like a scissor push kick, or he does a flying kind of kick. He kind of runs at you and wants to throw a kick to your face, kind of like a bit like what Masvidal did to Ben Askren. He kind of rushes guys sometimes. He has a very strong elbow game. He has a very, very long piercing limbs with elbow. I think if he does that with Makhachev is just going to circle, and then shoot. Even if Olivera pressures Makhachev, he's just going to end up getting taken down. So I don't think there's an easy way to stop the takedown from Islam Makhachev. Whether you go forward, whether you play it safe in a circle, there's just no easy way. Eventually, they're going to tie up. Look, watch Islam Makhachev's takedowns. They're almost effortless. He rarely struggles for takedowns. Like, he just gets them all the time. And their timing is impeccable. The variety is impeccable. He does every takedown. He does Hairagoshi, Tayotoshi, Uchigari, double leg, single leg. I mean, it's just incredible. He hits Ukigoshi. He hits every toss. And foot sweeps. Sasai, everything. He hits them all. He has such an incredible variety. It's incredible. Like, that's just his UFC. Watch his training footage. It's incredible. The takedown arsenal that this guy has. He's a freestyle wrestling expert and a judo expert. It's something Olivera has never seen. He's never fought a guy with this kind of arsenal. Never. When he fought Gaethje didn't want nothing to do with wrestling on the ground. When he fought Dustin Poirier, he had the wrestling advantage. Like, these are not things he's gonna have on fight night. Now, I gotta make a case for Olivera. Olivera has great striking. He has knockout power. He has he's shown to have incredible heart. He's lost a few fights in UFC. He's lost 2 fights in a row. I think twice in UFC. He's lost like, he had a bad losing streak once. I think out of 6 fights, he had lost 4 of them at one point early in his career in UFC. Like, the guy has a lot of heart to come back from that and to keep pushing forward, and not only to come back from that, but to become world champion. The guy has a lot of heart, but he does get knocked down. He's been knocked down multiple times in this fight. He's a brilliant fighter, but he's also a blood and guts fighter. He's a blood and guts, meaning he'll take one, he'll give one, he'll take one, he'll give one. He wins, but it's messy. Makhachev, not the case. Makhachev victories have been flawless. Rarely is he ever on the back foot. Rarely does anybody ever score on him. I just don't see how we can compare. Okay, guys, let me see what else. Guys, I'm turning it on to the comments and questions on this fight from your end, guys. I want to hear what you guys have to say about this fight, and then we'll open it up to it. Ask me anything. Islam because Charles is inconsistent. That's from KSW. I totally agree. Charles Olivera has had some incredible fights, but even within his own fights, he's inconsistent. He's a blood and guts fighter. His offense, striking offense, is superior to Islam Makhachev's, but his striking defense is inferior to Islam Makhachev. Listen to what I said. His ability to do damage and attack and shots per second is greater. His variety is greater than Islam Makhachev's. However, his defense, his awareness, his distance control, his defensive awareness is poorer than Islam Makhachev's. And that's why I think Islam's going to win. Not only does he have great offense in wrestling, but he's also smarter, more careful in the striking department. I've just changed my mind to Islam. That's from Lex Merrill. Oh, I'm glad I could at least convince one person. Look, guys, I'll tell you one thing. Fighting is chaotic. Nobody knows who's going to win. That's why we put them in the cage. This is just my view. You know, I don't think anybody can predict fights. It's just, you know, you can predict. If you put an A fighter and a B fighter, it's really easy to predict. You know, it's kind of like easier to see. But these are two world-class, A-level, tippy-top, cream of the crop, number one challenger versus champion. No, not on paper anymore. He's not champion on paper. But I think we could all forgive a 0.5 over the weight. I think, like, I still consider him champion, even though technically he's not champion. He was stripped. But we're talking about the champ and the number one contender, the tippy-top, cream of the crop, two fighters. They didn't get there because their names were chosen out of a hat. No, because they're great. Okay, no. They both have an incredible ability to finish. These guys finish fights at the highest level. That's an incredible skill. It makes things a lot harder to predict. I think this is going to be a very hard to call fight, but in my opinion, Islam's style is perfect to beat an Olivera. Everything Olivera does plays into his game. Olivera does spinning, jumping, flying attacks. Those are great opportunities for takedowns. Olivera has got a lot of subs, but he's not positionally strong. That's perfect. That's perfect for Islam Makhachev. Islam's gonna get past the subs and he's gonna dominate positionally and comfortably. He's gonna have a margin of comfort because he's so much more positionally strong. Olivera is the type of guy. He's very aggressive with subs. He's very, very aggressive with subs. He goes for those subs. He rolls, and they work big for him. But he loses position. He's not a positional fighter, and I think that's a plus for Makhachev. All he's got to worry about is like super aggressive subs, and if he can get past that positionally, it's an open season. I think it's going to be a good thing for Makhachev. Okay, guys, excuse me. I got to kick somebody out of the chat room. Put user in timeout. Hide user on channel. Okay. Sir, you've been hidden on the channel. Charles is the champ. Islam all the way. Olivera, the Bronx. All right. Lots of guys in here for the Bronx. Statistically, this is much bigger than Khabib versus McGregor. That's from Azmi. I'm not sure what you mean by statistically. I don't think it's going to be selling as many tickets, that's for sure. But I don't know what you mean by statistically. Olivera KOs Islam in the first 2 minutes of the fight. That's from JT. Well, you know, not impossible. You know, Olivera's got power, guys. That's one thing, I'll tell you. He's got more knockouts than Islam Makhachev. Islam Makhachev is not the biggest puncher, even though I would bet you he hits hard because he's such a freak athlete. I can only remember him ever knocking out Gleison Tibau. I can't think of anybody else he's knocked out, but he's been incredibly dominant. Coach, why are you still awake? That's from Mr. R. Well, because I had so many things to do that I need to get this podcast in, and this is the only time I got, my friends. This is the only time I have. Coach, Javier Mendez is on the record saying that Islam is better than Khabib. How would you compare the two? That's from Coop cooks. Guys, you know what? Practice room is different. I'm sure they're really close. They probably know each other very well. It's not the same. Sometimes you can have like two guys in the practice room and they're 50-50, and then you send them out to compete and one guy does a lot better than the other. And you have to ask yourself, why is that? I remember being in the wrestling club and we had a world-class Olympic level wrestler, like Gias Saudi had won the Olympic silver, and he had his training partner. They were like 50-50. He was a world-class wrestler, and this Canadian-born wrestling partner of his was like really, really putting it on him in the practice room. Like it was back and forth. It was a seesaw battle. And then when they go out and compete, of course, Gia was a world stage, and he would crush everybody. And the other guy that he's competing with, that he's practicing with, would do okay. He wouldn't do anywhere near as good. And we would all scratch our heads why, but not later on. We realized, as I grew up in the sport, I realized, as I grew up in martial arts, I realized more and more. Like if I train with you, I know your patterns. Like I know what you do. So I kind of have a heads up. Like I know what moves you like, etc. And I have to quote Bruce Lee here. I mean, Bruce Lee said, look, the number one quality a fighter should have is adaptability. Like you get in there and you figure out your opponent. That's so huge. Like every time a new guy walks in the gym and I know he's good, like I know he's a colored belt or something like that, like I want to roll with him. Like so I ask, like when I see a guy with like punched up ears or he's really muscular, I say, hey, you have experience? Yeah, okay, let's roll. Like I like to do that. Why? Because it's kind of like a fight. You're figuring out that person. Like when I roll with somebody, I've rolled with 50, 60 times already. It's not the same thing. I know what he does. I know what he likes to do. I know where he's dangerous. I know, like, is he an armbar guy? Is he good at, what kind of passing does he does? And you kind of like, you get stale, So it's hard to say who's better. It doesn't matter because they sparred with each other, 100 times, and maybe Islam's starting to figure out Khabib, or maybe Khabib, like, he's not as motivated to wrestle with him. Or believe me, these things are an issue when you're training together for a long, long time. Things like that happen in the practice room. There's a dynamic there. That's why I can't really tell you who's better in the practice room until we put them out in a real fight. And the guy has to adapt to an opponent who's throwing for real, who he doesn't know, who he hasn't wrestled with, who he's only, has a limited idea of who that person is. That's a huge element of fighting. That's huge. Actually, I would tell you guys, one of the most impressive fighters I've ever seen in my life. And I watch. Guys, I've been around and I've trained some of the best fighters in the world. I'll tell you, one guy that impresses me so much in boxing is Rigondeaux. One of the greatest Cuban boxers ever. He's won 200 amateur fights in Cuba in a row twice. So he won 200 fights, lost a couple, then won 200 more fights again in a row. Now, I never got a chance to work with Rigondeaux, but I spent a lot of time with Freddie Roach, one of the world's greatest boxing coaches, and he told me tons about Rigondeaux. He told me tons about him. He told me he's never seen a better defensive fighter ever in his life, and he told me all sorts of stuff that he does for training. And I just spent like 2 weeks talking about boxing with Freddie Roach, and Rigondeaux's name kept coming up. And of course, I'd go watch his fights, and I would study his movement. And I remember one time he was fighting Nonito Donaire. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, like when he was fighting Nonito had like 21 wins, 21 KOs. Like he's a killer. He's a killer fighter. Bigger than Rigondeaux. He's also bigger than Rigondeaux. So this Cuban fighter is coming into America. He's gonna fight this killer American fighter, like a guy who's like just knocking people out silly. And they're interviewing this Cuban guy, Rigondeaux, one of the greatest Cuban boxers ever. Guys, if you don't know about Cuba, they're the best amateur boxers in history. All the greatest amateur boxers all come out of Cuba. Okay, the vast majority of gold medals are won by Cuba in amateur boxing. This guy was the king of amateur boxing in Cuba. Think about how great he is. His whole life is boxing, nothing else. Now, okay, he's had losses in America when he lost to... But before he lost in America, he lost to Lomachenko. Okay, total shutout. But he was 40 then, or he's like 38. He was much older. Lomachenko's bigger, and also, I can get into details why I think he lost, but nonetheless, at this time, he's coming into America. Listen to this. He's coming into America, and he's fighting Nonito Donaire. Now we're all curious, like, does this guy know who Nonito Donaire is? Like, does he, or is he like, because in Cuba they don't follow American boxing. They ask him in an interview. They ask Rigondia, have you watched footage of your opponent? And Rigondia, I love this. I'll never forget this. Rigondia has like this weird look on his face. He's like, what? What do you mean? And they're like, you're fighting Nonito Donaire. Are you familiar with him? Have you seen him fight before? Have you studied his tapes? And he looks at the reporter and he's dumbfounded. He's like, people watch video of the guy they're gonna fight? And the reporter's like, yeah, of course, everybody does that. He's like, the guy's had 400 or 500 fights in his life, and he's never watched the video of the guy he's fighting. Never. He goes in the ring, he looks at the guy, and he figures him out in a few minutes, and he beats him. His ability to adapt in a fight is incredible. His ability to figure out his opponent is incredible. Why? He doesn't watch tape. He doesn't study. He focuses on his game, and his game is developing to beat everybody and anybody he steps in front of. He doesn't watch you for hours on end and then devise a plan and then make a training camp according to how you fight and what he's going to do to you on that fight. He doesn't do that at all. Actually, he found it incredibly bizarre. And I'll tell you, I've trained in Thailand for a long time, and I'll tell you, in Thailand, they don't watch tape of the guy they're fighting. They don't watch tape. They don't care. They're not interested. I think it's good to watch tape. Okay, don't get me wrong. I think it is good, but it's just not in their culture. For them, I'm fighting every 2-3 weeks. You think I'm going to study the guy I'm fighting? Whatever the guy does, I'm gonna be ready for it. They have a totally different mindset. Now, I know a lot of MMA fighters, they don't like to watch tape. It's too emotional. So they want their coaches to watch tape. And I know some fighters in MMA, they're crazy about watching tape. Their coaches watch tape and they watch tape. And I know some coaches and fighters, both of them together, don't watch tape. I've seen it done every which way. At the highest levels, I've seen very, very successful coaches and fighters that watch no tape. They've seen the guy, maybe they saw him once fight, before, as an up-and-comer. They were invited to a show, a UFC, and they watched it they watched they had ringside seats, octagon side seats. They watched the guy that might fight one day, and that's how it just so happened to they be there, and so they saw the guy fight, but they won't watch anything. I'll tell you, a lot of top fighters. Now, it's not as common. This kind of behavior is not as common in MMA. Most MMA guys will want to watch a few fights. However, in boxing, in Muay Thai especially, let me tell you something. In Muay Thai, it's not uncommon. They're fighting a foreigner and they know nothing about him. Nothing about this foreigner. Because when they're fighting another Thai, they probably saw him when they were younger. They fought, this is probably the second, third time around. They fought him. They've heard about him. But I'm telling you, when Thais fight foreigners, and I've trained with a lot of Thais that are fighting foreigners, they don't care. They don't want to know. They're not interested. Whatever the guy does, they're gonna figure it out. That's the culture that they come from. Okay, guys, what else we got here on this? All right, what else we got here on this fight, guys? Coach, I think Armen Tsarukian took down Islam a couple of times. That's from Brandon Foster. I think he only took him down once, actually, officially. I think only once. How does Islam fare off his back against Charles? That's from John Pico Jones. Look, if he gets put on his back, I think he's going to easily get up. I'll tell you why. Because Charles Olivera is a great grappler, but he's not a positional grappler. He's not a positional grappler. Guys, any position Charles is going to be in with Makhachev, Makhachev can either maintain it or break free. He's going to win the positional war. If Charles Olivera gets a sub, it's going to be a rear naked. How's he going to get to the rear naked? Positionally, it's going to be very difficult. He'd have to rely on the guillotine, which I think is going to be tough, very tough to do. Not impossible. I'm not saying impossible. I'm just saying tough. What does someone What does someone taking down Islam have anything to do with anything? Charles ain't even gonna try. That's from Usman. I agree. Charles ain't even gonna try. Listen, guys, I agree. Totally. Usman, you're 100% right. I didn't say Charles Olivera is gonna go in there and try to score a takedown. That would be ridiculous. He's just gonna wear himself out trying that. He's just gonna wear himself out. If he does that, it's gonna backfire, guys. It's gonna backfire bad. Okay, so I'm not saying he's gonna try to take down Islam Makhachev. I'm saying his way of taking down Islam would be to knock Islam down. That's not out of the realm of possibility. A knee, an elbow, a kick, a punch. Oh, Charles Oliveira's got power in every limb. He's got power in every limb. A head kick, a knee, an elbow. It could all happen. A push kick to the face. Guys, nothing's out of the realm of possibility. He could knock down Islam Makhachev. Makhachev has been knocked out once in his career. It's not out of the realm of possibility. If he knocks down Makhachev and he jumps on his back, he can finish him. That's one way I think he could sub him. Absolutely. Coach, can Islam's strength neutralize Charles' impressive BJJ? That's from Tony. Tony, I agree with you. Not only is Islam a better positional grappler, he's also physically, in my opinion, stronger and with better endurance. I think physically, as they exchange and they fight for position, I think Islam Makhachev is going to have the efficiency advantage. The efficiency advantage. I'm not sure what the odds are, but I would assume Islam Makhachev is the favorite. How is this different from Khabib versus Tony? That's from Jurius. You know what? It's pretty close, I would say. If we all go back and remember the Ferguson that was supposed to fight that Khabib when he was at the height of his game. It's quite similar to this, a submission wizard with really aggressive striking against a very, very seasoned takedown artist with powerful athletic ability to punch. It's quite similar. It's quite similar. Chin comparison. Wow, ooh, that's a tough one. Tough one. We've never seen really Makhachev get his chin checked. I know he's been knocked out once in UFC. That can happen to anybody, guys. You go in there, 20 seconds, boom, you get caught on the chin, guys. That can happen to anybody. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're the world's greatest boxer. You can get knocked out. It can happen. Now, what's happened since then? He's won like 10 fights in a row, and he hasn't had his bell rung at all. He's been very defensively responsible before and after that fight. A one-punch knockout, guys, can happen at any time. Why do you think in boxing when you knock somebody down, they give him an 8 count? Why do you think they do that? Because they know, hey, if you're a better boxer than him and that wasn't a lucky punch, let's just give this guy a small little break, stand him back up, and do it again if you're so much a better boxer than him. That's the whole point of the 10 count. It's like they want to eliminate the lucky punch and they want to see who's the better fighter. You can knock a man down 3 times. They're like, hey, they're still not convinced. They're still, well, 3 times usually it's TKO, but let's say you knock him down twice. Oh, no, wait a second. That could have been lucky again. Let's give the guy an 8 count. Let him stand back up, and let's see if you're the better boxer. That's the whole point. Why do hockey games, why is it best out of 7? Because you could just, you could have had a lucky night. And if you look at like 2 hockey teams, one night a team can win 4-0, and the next night they lose 4-0. What happened? Like literally 24 hours later, they played each other again. One night they won 4-0. One night they lose 4-0. It's like, what happened? And then they lose every game after that. But what happened to that first game where you won 4-0? Then you lost 4-0 and you lost three other games. You got wiped out. It's the best out of 7. Like, we see those kind of weird, bizarre combinations all the time. Why? Athletes make adjustments. Athletes figure things out. Athletes make adjustments. Adjustments like we were talking about earlier. Adaptability. Those who adapt the best make it the furthest. I love that quote that Mayweather has in his gym. He has a beautiful banner, and it says, champions adapt to anything. It's something along those lines. It's like champions adapt to anything. In the fight, he's going to adapt. In the fight, if you watch a Mayweather fight, he's the best. He's the best at adapting. It's incredible. He'll fight one way in round 1. He'll fight another way in round 2. Round 3, he's doing something totally different, and he found what works. By round 3, he figured you out. And you can see he's changing his approach, and it's working. And then he takes an easy win. he's incredible. Mayweather is incredible at adapting in a fight. It's phenomenal. If you watch countless fights and you watch that guy, you find that this guy always finds a way to make adjustments and win the fight. It's incredible to watch. Guys, just a quick reminder. Promo code AB15. Get $15 off anything on jujiclub.com. jujiclub.com. Lots of new content, guys. Check it out. Make sure to use your promo code AB15 and also ADCC25. Check out the description, guys. There's other promo codes for you guys. Please do enjoy, have fun, and pick up something you like. Charles could use submission attempts to get back to his feet, ? That's from M. Castle. Yeah, he can get back to his feet, but very difficult. Unlikely. I'll tell you, if Islam takes him down, unlikely Charles escapes to his feet successfully. I think he's going to be pinned. He's going to be controlled positionally. There's going to be ground and pound and even sub attempts, or Islam Makhachev finishes him with a sub. Guys, in MMA, it's so different in jiu-jitsu when you're allowed to hit the guy. If I'm allowed to punch you, it's just so much better to be on top. Coach, I don't know why you're not reading all the super chats. Yes, sir. Okay, I'm going to go back. I hate missing super chats, guys. I know I need to be reminded. Thank you for reminding me. Salam, Coach. Just want to say God bless you and guide you always. I mean, that's from Clifton Adams. Well, Jazakallah khair and Jazakallah, brother, and same to you. Thank you very much, Clifton Adams. That's very sweet of you. All right, let's see what other super chat I missed. How different is Khabib from Tony? I got that one. Tips on stopping binge eating. That's from Sean S. Sean, let's save that for a little bit. I'm going to circle back to Sean's question. That's a great, great question. How to stop binge eating. Guys, I'm a binge eater. Let's talk about this. This is such a great topic. Such a great topic. But I want to wrap up the Olivera Islam Makhachev, which I think we're doing shortly, and I'm going to circle back to that question. Islam will got his back like a cold blanket. That's from ZLE. Like a cold blanket? I think you mean like a wet blanket. I figured the 10 count was to maximize CTE. That's from Guy. Why do boxers have 10 counts? It's actually 8 count to maximize CTE, according to Guy. No, Guy. It's because, back in the day, people would bet. People would travel far and abroad. They would buy expensive tickets. They don't want to show up to a lucky punch. They want to see who the better boxer is. So I assume that's why they invented the rule of the 8 count. Betting is haram. That's from NEO. Of course it is. And I never bet. However, I do give you guys my take on who I think is going to win. But it's not for betting purposes. I think Charles is going to welcome the takedown way too easily just to realize the strength disparity will be huge, in my opinion. That's from Usman. Yeah, I think he's not gonna want to give the takedown up for free, but I don't think he's thinking. I don't think in Charles Oliveira's mind. I don't think Charles has any doubt he's getting taken down. I think Charles is gonna be like, hey, I know sooner or later this guy's gonna take me down, and that's a stressful thing. Okay, guys, throw me your last comments and questions on this fight, and let's put this one to bed. Could Charles use submission attempts to get back to his feet? We did that one. How did you guys feel when you were facing? Listening to you, Coach, for 5 minutes, I was about to bet the house on Islam. That's from Ace Strike. Ace, do not bet the house on Islam, okay? Do not bet the house. Now, I have a strong confidence he's gonna win, but I do not recommend gambling, okay, guys? Fighting is unpredictable. You never know. Maybe Islam Makhachev shoots and catches a knee to the face, catches an out. Look what happened to Usman versus Leon Edwards. Usman versus Leon Edwards. Everything we thought would happen in round one was a complete opposite. Usman loses round one, gets taken down. He's never been taken down really in his career. Actually, Kobe took him down once, even though statistically they didn't count it, but it was officially, I counted it as a takedown, no doubt. Leon Edwards takes him down, wins round one, like so dominant, and then loses two. Like after that round one, we're like, oh, wait a second, we totally miscalculated. Usman's going to lose this fight. And then Usman takes back control. 2, 3, everything's in control. 4 is in control. Round 5 is in control. And then kick to the neck, and it's just like the worst KO. The worst KO you could imagine. Like, fighting is so unpredictable, guys. Do not, do not bet the house. Okay, do not. Please do not. You missed my super chat. That's from Ali Diak. Okay, Ali Diak, please ask me another question in the chat. I'm going to highlight you some way. I was just saying random stuff. All right, man. I apologize. I missed it. I hate missing super chats. I just put you as moderator. Just if you want to put your super chat in the chat room, and I'll try to find it. Okay, guys, we did 41 minutes on Islam Makhachev and Khabib. Now let's do an AMA, guys. We can talk about absolutely anything. Absolutely anything. Sean asked me, how do you stop binge eating? Guys, that's such a huge question, man. That is such a huge question. Binge eating is such a difficult thing to stop. Food is everywhere. It's cheap, it's delicious, and it's literally everywhere. There's a McDonald's, there's a Harvey's, there's a A&W. They're everywhere. Food is everywhere. And guess what? It smells good. It tastes good. And it's incredibly addictive. Food is incredibly addictive. I can't understand people who don't enjoy food. Like, I personally just don't understand it. Like, some people are like, I know a few people are like, food, whatever. You know, it doesn't interest me. Like, what? Food is one of the ultimate human drives. It's one of the ultimate human drives. You know what? I'm watching a lot of survivalist stuff nowadays. Like, I'm watching a lot of survivalists. Like, I'm really interested in survival. Like, just out of interest, like, how do people survive with primitive survival? Primitive. And it's incredible. Like, these people haven't eaten in days. They can barely find shelter. They're getting eaten by mosquitoes. They're out there in the woods. They're trying to survive. And then they catch a fish and they haven't eaten in days. Like, they've lost. They put them on these 21-day challenges. I'm telling you, even the top survival experts can't last. You have top survival experts quitting after 4 or 5 days. You have guys like sometimes you never know what kind of weather you're going to get. You never know what kind of animals you're going to come across. You never know what you're going to get bitten by. And these guys, they're starving. Everybody loses weight. Everybody loses easily 15, 20 pounds. Their resources are so scarce. And then they catch a little fish. And they cook that fish, man. And they're starving to death. And then they eat that fish and they're crying. And they're like, this is the greatest food I've ever had. Like, food is such a primal urge. Like, we're constantly... Our whole system is driven to find resources and eat and consume calories. Like, I know when I used to cut weight, I used to become obsessed with food. Like, I've done so many weight cuts helping fighters cut weight. They go through different phases, and one of them is the food fantasy. Like, right when you are cutting weight, you'll see fighters, they'll start watching like cooking channels. They start like making a list of foods they're going to eat after the weigh-in. They start like food fantasizing, like just thinking about food all the time. And how do you cut that? How do you cut that? That's such an important question, and it's a very, very important question to answer because people ruin their lives with food. Like, sometimes I look at people and I'm like, man, this person's like 50, 60 pounds overweight. Like, that's so horrible. Like, they have an unhealthy relationship with food. Guys, just a quick note. I will be interviewing very shortly Paul Saladino, the carnivore MD. Okay, not that I'm a carnivore guy or anything like that. But we're going to be talking. We're going to be talking about food and diet and, you know, what's the best way to go about eating, etc. I think it's going to be a very interesting podcast. Now, guys, for those of you who are new to this channel, I'm obsessed with dieting. Like, I'm obsessed with knowing about everything about diet, nutrition. And I have a lot of questions to ask him. I think we're going to have a very interesting chat. I personally don't see the benefit in eating only meats, but I do see benefit in eating meat. So I think we're going to have a very interesting discussion. But in my opinion, how to stop binge eating is you need to get a lot of starch in your diet. And I'm going to recommend the works of John McDougall. He wrote a book called The Starch Solution. And when I came across this book, I really finally felt satisfied. I can eat, and he's more vegan. I'm not vegan. I would still eat small. That's why I you know, like I've read so many books on nutrition, and 2 books that influenced me immensely was Nutritarianism by Joel Furman, and The Starch Solution by John McDougall. Those two books, guys, I've read countless books. Those two books, I kind of put them together. Why? Because in Nutritarianism, you can have some meat. So I would eat meat, but you're not allowed a lot of starch. And I felt like eating salad and soup all the time. I was always hungry. So I added starch. So even though John McDougall is too vegan for me, I need starch. I eat starch every single day, every single meal, almost every single meal. High carb, low fat for me works best. More on that when I speak to Paul Saladino. But that's the only way I feel full. Like if you put me on an all meat diet, or if you put me on like low carb, I'm always hungry. I'm always craving sugar. I'm always craving more. And I can eat a steak and feel full, but 2 hours later, I'm hungry again. 3 hours later, I'm hungry again. So how do you stop binge eating? Number one, yes, it's psychological, but two, it's also giving yourself starch. If you eat starch and you cut out the fat, you can be lean and satisfied. However, if you eat a lot of starch and you eat a lot of fat, you will be fat. Okay? So we have to minimize fat. In the morning, I eat oatmeal, let's say. I have oatmeal almost every single day. Lunchtime, I have like rice, potatoes, a little bit of meat, vegetables, lentils, beans, all that kind of stuff. At night, same thing, okay? But I have to have rice. I have to have potatoes. That's the only thing that will satisfy me. If I don't eat potatoes, if I don't eat rice, man, I'm still hungry. There's just nothing that will quench that hunger. So for me, that was my solution, because before that, I used a lot of willpower. Like I was hungry. I'd go to bed hungry, and I would wake up and I feel a little bit tired. I would just push on through. With the starch now, not being scared of starch, just eating starch, potatoes, rice, quinoa. Not so much bread. I feel like I gain weight on bread. And just really getting that starch in satisfies those cravings. It makes me feel full, satisfied, lean, strong. I can build muscle. I can train really, really hard. I have energy all the time. I feel really, really good. So I highly recommend Starch Solution. Okay, guys, I got a bunch more super chats. Let me zoom back. And see what I missed. I've been at Unity, New York City for 3 months, and I don't know. I find myself unhappy and cannot shake wanting to move on. The level is high and the moves shown are great, and I will not accept a downgrade in class. I'm so unsure of what I want. That's from Derwin. Derwin, my man, you're at Unity. You're probably training with my good friend Murillo Santana, which I've done a lot of training with, and he's a phenomenal instructor. Listen, man, I'm not sure why you're unhappy. You didn't tell me why you're unhappy. They definitely have a very, very high level of jiu-jitsu. My good friend Eddie Cummings is also there here. And I would highly recommend you talk to your team, talk to your instructors, be polite about it, bring it out on the table and talk to them. You know, tell them what's wrong with your experience there. And I'm sure you're going to get positive feedback. I'm sure you guys can work it out. Tips on stopping binge eating. I just did that one. Guys, get the Starch Solution. It's amazing. I personally don't go vegan. I eat meat. I take whey protein. Guys, when I have my oatmeal, I put 2 scoops of whey protein in there. So I put oatmeal. I put like oat milk or rice milk. I warm it up. I cook it in rice milk. I put raisins. I put 2 scoops of protein, and I'm in heaven, man. It's a beautiful meal. Like 2 scoops of whey protein. So it's like 60 grams of protein I have just in that one meal. It's high carb, low fat. I train on that. It's easy to digest. I'm satisfied. It's sweet. It's delicious. It does have a little bit of fat, but from the oatmeal, but it's healthy fats, and that's such a good breakfast. Or even have it as a dessert. Like when I feel like I want to have a cake or something, I make that exact meal I just described. And with the whey protein, it's just so high in protein. It's just so healthy. And I feel helps me put on muscle. And if I need to put on muscle, you got to eat that protein. You got to have the right levels of protein, adequate amount of protein in your diet if you want to build muscle. And it's just the ultimate meal, guys. It's the ultimate satisfactory meal. I put fruit in there. I'll put a banana. I can change it. I can make it in so many different ways that it keeps it fun and interesting. I fast 17 hours a day. That's from Vintage. Vintage, that's a really good idea. I really think intermittent fasting is very important. I prefer doing 16-hour days fasting, but I mean, you're right around that ballpark. I don't like to go more. I don't like to go too much more. Intermittent fasting is good to control binge eating. That's from Asmi, if done well. I agree with you. Look, intermittent fasting is tough in the beginning, but once you break through the beginning, it's amazing. It's really, really amazing. You don't feel hungry. You don't feel hungry. And I'll tell you the secret to intermittent fasting, if you have a very busy life, if like you wake up in the morning, you're working from 9 to 5 or 9, like you're just busy all day. Intermittent fasting, I find, is really easy. Like the times I find intermittent fasting difficult is when I have nothing to do, which is rare. So it's good for me. It works. But let's say I'm bored. I have a day off. I don't feel like fasting. I want to enjoy, eating and going out and doing whatever. But I'm such a busy person. It works for me. Intermittent fasting really, really works for me. And I think it could work for you. However, I don't intermittent fast all year round. I do cycle my fasting. So there are times where I'll be intermittent fasting, or sometimes I'll take a few months off and I'll just eat lunch, breakfast, dinner with a couple of snacks, and I'll change it up. For us, what's your opinion on Volk being a backup fighter? That's from CSS Vote. And I heard that, if somebody doesn't make weight, Volk will step in. That would be crazy interesting. That would be like, I got to say that if that's true, that if they're doing that, if Volk is really, hats off to him, man, for getting in there at 155. That's incredible. It would be incredibly exciting. I would be just as excited to watch that as the main event. Volk getting next title shot after this fight. That's from Darius. I hope that's true, because I would love to see Volk at 155. It would be very interesting. Like, I'm really interested in seeing that. I don't know if that is true, but if it is, wow. For us, have you heard how Jiri meditates? He is complete dark room for 3 to 4 days only with water. That's from CSS Voden. Really? I'm not sure why he would do that. I don't think that would that would enhance fighting performance. Maybe he's doing it for a spiritual awakening of some sort. But I think he should. Well, I mean, I would have to ask him why he does it. But I would be concerned about his training. What are your thoughts on Andrew Tate ban? That's from Aladdin 18. Well, you know what, guys? Listen, Andrew Tate's an interesting guy. I was actually trying to get him on this channel. I wanted to interview him and talk to him because there's so much I agree with him and so much I disagree with him. There's so much I disagree with him, and I actually wanted to talk to him about it because he's actually influencing my kids. So I was gonna kind of like, in a nice way, let him know that his words have repercussions, out in the world. What do I think about the ban? I'm not big on the ban. I don't think they should have banned them. I think they should have discussed with him. I think they should have debated with him. I think they should have confronted him. But I don't think they should have banned him. No, I think that went too far. What are your opinions on Jeffrey Dahmer? Is his behavior for killing, eating people nature or nurture or both? I'm not familiar with his crimes. I know he's a famous serial killer, etc. And from what I understand in your message, he's a cannibal. Guys, you know what? I think psychopaths, I don't think they're human, to be honest with you. I think to be human, you have to be more than flesh and bone. Like, if you have no empathy. I was watching a survival show, and it was a hilarious episode. It was amazing. Such an amazing episode because it was like this killer Navy SEAL guy. The guy was a killer Navy SEAL. And you could tell his demeanor was stone cold. Like, this guy doesn't smile. He speaks with a monotone voice. Like, this guy just has no emotion. And they drop him off in the middle of nowhere, and he has to go survive on an island. And he has a partner. And his partner's like this little blonde, tiny, like, she weighs 100 pounds. She's like all bubbly. She's the complete opposite of him. He's a man, she's a woman. He's big and strong, she's small and tiny. He's cold-blooded demeanor. She's all bubbly and sweet and kind and cheery and smiley. They get on the island, and everything she suggests, he's just completely ignoring. Don't forget, this guy's like a Navy SEAL. He's high up. He's used to taking orders from really highly trained people. And this guy's on the island, and he's like, I'm gonna figure out this problem on my own. I don't need this girl. They're supposed to partner up with each other, these survivalists. And he's completely ignoring her. Like, she's uninteresting to him. And she was in distress. She was like, getting eaten by bugs. He just didn't care. He couldn't care less. He's going to find food, water, shelter. He's going to do it this way. He doesn't really have much to say to her. He's not really interested in cooperating with her. And then, she confronts him about it. She's like, hey, like, do you have something like you want to tell me? Is something bothering you? And they start talking about empathy. And he starts saying, well, I think empathy. Listen to what he says. He says, I think empathy is a human character flaw. Now, she was taken aback. She was like, empathy is a human character flaw? And I'll tell you something. I know people, I've talked to people who've told me the same exact thing. Don't forget, as a philosopher, you have a lot of interesting conversation with a lot of people who've done a lot of thinking. And some people out there, they really believe that empathy is just a human character flaw. And this guy's saying it on national TV. He's open about it. Now, the girl was taken aback. Like, she was really like, whoa, this guy's just like, he doesn't care if I live or die. So as the challenge went on, it's incredible. It's incredible how the world works. It's really incredible how life works. Because she ends up getting more kills, like finding resources, finding solutions. He couldn't start a fire. The guy was like killing himself trying to start a fire. He's trying every method in the book. He studied the book. He's in Navy SEAL. This is what you're supposed to do. And I'm trained to do it. And guess what? It's not working. It's not working. It's not working. And then she had the idea of using her diving mask as a magnifying glass to start fire with the sun. Guys, you know what? It's super hard to start a fire in a survival situation. Super hard. Like, you have these highly trained survivalists that can't start the fire. Because it also depends on the conditions, the humidity, the wood you're using. Like, it's just such an interesting science. And people who are using, like, when survivalists come to this challenge, they bring their own wood. They bring their own, like, friction fire equipment. And they can't start a fire because the condition that they're in is more humid or whatnot. And it's just not the right condition. And it just won't start. Now, this girl, who's not a Navy SEAL, she's also a trained survivalist. She takes her chances at starting a fire, and she gets the fire going. She gets the food. She resolves certain like issues they had with shelter. She's the one scoring all the points, and the guy starts to come around. He starts to realize, hey, you know what? I got to change my attitude. Like, this girl she's doing good. I totally dismissed her at first. I totally dismissed her. I thought she was not worthy, and here she's the one feeding me, giving me fire, giving me shelter, doing all these good things. And since the Darwinian paradigm shift, and this is long before Darwin, guys, long before Darwin. If you look through history, great thinkers thought the same way. They thought, like, who cares if you live or die? What matters is if I live or die. That's like, this is not uncommon, okay? But especially after Darwin, it's become mainstream. Every Joe Blow now is thinking about survival and reproduction. Every Joe Blow's heard about this idea. Before, there were many thinkers who talked about it, but it wasn't mainstream. It's not something like, if you want to tell somebody something in ancient world, it was very difficult. Now, today, you have everybody's got a voice. Everybody's information is circulating at warp speed. So more and more people now are starting to realize, hey, you know what? There's more and more atheists. There's more and more nihilism. There's more and more survival and reproduction. What's life about? Oh, it's about going on. It's about survival and reproduction. It's about moving forward. It's about gaining resources. Much more mechanical. And what is the repercussion of that? Like, for instance, if you look at the writings of Adolf Hitler, like, he's clearly Darwinian in his thinking. He writes in Mein Kampf. He writes, without the German race, there's only the dance of the apes, meaning, the Germans are the apex of the race, and everybody else is just an ape. They're still backwards. They're still up on the trees. They haven't evolved as far as us. We're the superior race. We're the supreme race. they start to see themselves as more human or more worthy, and you're just flesh and bone. You're just like, you're disposable. And it's scary, but there are many people think like this. Like, I don't want to be alarming or anything, but there are a lot of people I've talked to over the years that it's shocking to me that they still see it that way. Because look at what Hitler did. Hitler thought certain people were subhuman. And like, for instance, he expelled a lot of the Jews. Of course, we all know this. A lot of the Jews he expelled helped defeat him. The people who he thought were worthless, were no good, were a problem, actually were the people who helped develop the nuclear bomb. Like, a lot of great thinkers, Einstein actually himself, an Austrian Jew, wrote a letter to the President of the United States in the time saying, look, nuclear power is possible. We know this for a fact. We need to get to the H-bomb before Hitler. We need to get to the H-bomb before Hitler does. And lo and behold, they do. Now, that wasn't the real reason why Germany had their demise, but it was still a major factor. It was still a major factor. Imagine Hitler had suspended his prejudice and forced his scientists that he had control over at the time to develop the H-bomb. And imagine he would have got it first. Like, the people he thought were not worth much, were not as good as his scientists, actually were the ones to discover and figure out the H-bomb. It's incredible to me how many times this happens in history. People think that, oh, this group is a group of misfits. This group is a group of no good. They're weak. They're defective in some way. Like, for instance, it's funny I mentioned Einstein, but Einstein, when he was young, if I remember correctly in his biography, they thought something was wrong with him. Like, they thought like he wasn't developing as fast as the other kids. Now today we know that the brain, the more advanced IQs, they take longer to wire. They're more complex wiring. But they deemed him as less intelligent. Like, when I was going to school, I have no shame in saying I was always in what we call the bobo classes. when I was in French school, I was in the bobo classes, like the kids who need help, so they'd come into class, a teacher would come into class, round up all the kids who are not smart enough, put us in a room. They would put us in a room and kind of like help us, help us because your grades are not good enough. You guys are not doing well in school. But lo and behold, my problem was really the language. As soon as I went to college and I started studying in English, all of a sudden my grades skyrocketed. Why? Because I was really bad at French. Why am I bad at French? I have very little exposure to French. Very little exposure. Nobody speaks French in my home. I didn't grow up speaking French. But I'm in a French school system, and I have to do their tests in French, and I have to read and write in French, and I have to think in French. And it's just not my mother tongue. I just don't express myself that way. I watch English TV. I grew up on that. Like, everything about me is English. It's English. That's what I grew up with. Then you put me in a school where I have to do French. And now they think I'm like, I need special tutoring, etc. But actually, I don't need special tutoring. I just don't speak this language. I'm not good with this language. I would love to take a comparative IQ test with the teachers who deemed me to be slow. I would love to just like ask them, like, why did you think I was slow? Like, what is it in your training, your ability to assess a human mind that you think that I was slow? Really, I was just not good at what they were asking me to do. But also, I don't blame my teachers. I mean, that's totally out of their control. Totally out of their control. It's just that here in Quebec, they really want to push the French language. So non-French speaking immigrants who come here, they have to learn French. You have to. They're still to this day pushing it. But it's really tough. It's really tough for us who don't have... you didn't grow up around French. What were you speaking with GSP? That's from Kareem. Guys, when I met GSP, he spoke very little English, and I spoke very, very little French. But we understood each other, even though we honestly were not good at talking. Now, he got good at English when he went to The Ultimate Fighter for the first time. And then he came back and because he got immersed in the U.S. Like he was, and then I got really good at French when I married my wife, and she speaks French. So it's just like she was shy to talk to me in English when I first met her. We got married. She was just speaking to me in French all the time, just because she was too shy to speak in English. So I started practicing more French, but it took a beautiful French girl to teach me French. You know, my teachers were just not good enough. Stick to the title, please, coach. Guys, the first 40 minutes is all about Makhachev and Olivera. Now it's a portion of AMA. Ask me anything. We've put that one to bed, guys. Rewind this podcast to the beginning. You'll hear the whole thing. Have you watched the new discussion between Muhammad Hijab and Jordan Peterson? That's from Benjamin. No, I haven't. Not well. I only know of one, and that one I did listen to. But if there's a new one, I'm not aware of it. Hassan Haytham sent me a super chat, and I missed it. Let me see here. Hassan Haytham. Hassan Haytham, my friend. I don't see. I apologize. Put it in the chat and I'll try to pick it up again. Just don't pay another super chat. Just type in your question right now and I'll take care of it. What was the last time you had to use your skills for self-defense situation? That's from Dry Eye Gaming. It's been a long time since I had to hit somebody. And I'm grateful for that. But the last time, we're talking about 15 years ago. 15 years ago, I would say. Dana needs to quit the steroids and quit drinking. Dave L. Guys, I heard that Dana White has some kind of health issue. I'm really sorry to hear that, but I honestly don't know what it is. I haven't heard the details, but that's a really sad issue, and I hope I hope it's not too serious. For us, is crypto dead? CSS voting with the great questions tonight. Is crypto dead? No, it's not dead. Crypto is gonna come back, guys. This is my fifth or fourth crash, man. It's gonna come back, guys. Crypto is never going away. Now, if you're looking to make long-term money, I would say invest in crypto. If you think you're gonna flip your money tomorrow, it's a very risky game. So if you're in it for a long run, chill, relax. It's gonna come back. Relax. I'm not the least bit worried. I'm not the least bit worried about crypto. It ain't going away. And if they regulate it, it's gonna be a good thing. I think if they regulate it, it'll be even better. Crypto will be even better. It will never, inshallah, crash. Yes, I agree. Inshallah, it will never crash. Q4, big bounce coming. That's from Young Joe. Young Joe. I wouldn't be surprised if Q4, but it could take a lot longer too. You know, be patient. Thoughts on mystical Sufism and there being as many roads to Allah as there are people. Have you ever studied the Sufis, especially the works of Idris Shah or Laila Vaughan Lee? Thank you, Coach. Well, no, Idris Shah and Vaughan Lee, no. But I'm very familiar with Sufism. And look, you know, it's kind of hard to explain, really, but it's quite a topic you just bring up. Yes, there are many paths to God, yes, but that all those paths have one thing in common. All those paths have one thing in common, and that's to do with the fitrah, you know. As a human being discovers his natural religion he's born with, then he's upon the fitrah, his primordial belief, his innate natural religion, yes. So I would say yes, there are many ways to discover that, yes, because it's innate. Innate means you're born with it. You're born with it. What do you think of Muhammad Shahur's philosophy? Well, I don't know who that is, so let me look him up. Let's see who this gentleman you bring up is. Okay, we'll have to look him up later. Glad I made a note of it. Thank you. Okay. What else we got here? Thoughts on UFO disclosure. That's from Suku Nam Now. Yeah, guys, I believe there are very likely other living creatures in the world, in the universe. Other very likely, very likely, and it wouldn't surprise me in the least. But if you do the math, the distances are so great that they must have some understanding of time and space that we don't have if we're ever gonna cross paths. Now, I've watched documentaries, alien documentaries, and GSP's always sending me, always, George St. Pierre, my longtime friend and guy I've trained for over 12, 15 years. We were in a professional circuit together. I can tell you that this man is obsessed with aliens. Obsessed. He's always trying to he's always trying to make me understand. He's always trying to make me understand about the others, about this group of people. And I get it. I understand them. I do believe there are aliens out there. But I'm telling you, he sends me every shred of evidence. I'm telling you, if you go out there and find a documentary on aliens, GSP's watched it. I'll tell you, it's so rare. It's so rare I find one that he's never heard of. It's so rare I find a little morsel here, a little morsel there of alien evidence, and he hasn't heard of it. I'm telling you, whenever I tell him about something, he's like, that was 2 weeks ago. That's old, coach. That's old. You bring that up now? That's 2 weeks ago. That's 2 weeks ago. He's obsessed with alien and petrified. The man is petrified of aliens. Petrified. I remember one time we're in a hotel room. I can't remember which fight. And, we're at fight week or whatnot. And there's a foam roller on the door inside the hotel room. And I take it and I put it away. And then he's like, hey, coach, what happened to the foam roller on the door? I'm like, what do you mean? I put a foam roller right on the door, the exit door. If you want to exit, you got to take the foam roller out of the way and open the door to exit. It's in the way. He's like, yeah, I put it there. I'm like, why do you put it there? Why do you put a foam roller? Why would a man do that? I'm like, there's no good answer. Whatever he's about to say, just doesn't make any sense. And you're about to go to sleep. He's about to go to sleep, and he puts a foam roller. He puts a foam roller behind the door. I'm like, it makes no sense. The door is locked. I mean, he's like, because if aliens come in and they take me, I'll know the next day that the foam roller was moved, because he has this thing where he gets abducted and they wipe his memory. So he leaves himself little clues. He'll leave himself little clues. He'll know that, hey, if the foam roller's not there tomorrow, I know what happened again. And I'm like, what the hell, man? This is insane. This man needs medication. It makes me laugh, guys. I'm telling you, I laughed so hard that time. I was like, you think that's your strategy? Yeah, that's it. That's his whole strategy. These beings have traveled from light years with the most sophisticated technologies. Like, if they made it from here, from wherever they are, if they're at the nearest star, it's like 4 light years away. You have to travel the speed of light for 4 years to get here. And you think a foam roller, like they got all the way here, they have all this technology, but the foam roller, that's how you're gonna get them. It's brilliant, honestly. The human mind. Okay, what else here? Another super chat. How did you learn from John and remember all the moves he taught you? Need instructional advice. That's from Gemini June. Well, Gemini, I'll tell you something. I've learned countless moves in Jiu-Jitsu. Countless. And I remember all of them and who taught it to me. I remember all of them and who taught it to me. And once in a while, I forget who taught it to me. Very, very rare instance. I'll remember where I saw it. If I saw somebody use it, I'll remember, hey, this guy used it in this year at that match in this sequence, and they went through this sequence, and then at the 8-minute mark, this happened. And sometimes I'll conflate fights, sometimes I'll conflate moves, but I get pretty close. And yeah, you're gonna make a mistake here and there, but you don't forget those moves. Now, sometimes I'll learn an armbar that's really great. I fall in love with it. I think, it's the best armbar. Then I'll forget about it. Not that I forgot about it, but I'm thinking about other moves. But if you ask me about that armbar, I'll be like, yeah, I used to use that all the time. It's a great move. I just like have all these other 8 moves I've been working on. So it's not that you forget about it. It's just that there's other new moves to explore. So you kind of put it on the shelf. But those moves are all still in there. Okay, they're all still in there. Now, how does that happen? Well, it doesn't happen at the beginning of your career. Like when I was a blue belt, I was a purple belt. It's not true I was able to remember all the moves. It's not true. I forgot moves. It's once you get, like, you're spending so much time training that eventually all the moves remind you of another move that you did, and then you remember you've seen it before. Like, it just, if you consume yourself with jiu-jitsu and wrestling and boxing, it just becomes easy. It just becomes easy. It's just time and energy and focus and effort, and I think about them all the time, and then they just pop back in my memory. Now also I do a lot of mnemonics. I do a ton of mnemonics. Like, I'm a mnemonics guy. I love mnemonics, which is basically memory training. Okay, so I think it's really, really important because I have I think, like, in some instances I have a very below average memory, and mnemonics kind of bring me up to par. However, when it comes to moves, because that's what I do, it's really easy for me to remember. I remember I came across a study where they were showing chess masters chessboards versus regular people, and they were trying to see how much can the chess master recall the positions of the pieces on different chessboards. So they'll show you a scenario A, scenario B, scenario C, scenario D, scenario E. Try to remember as many boards as you can. And of course, the chess master remembered so much more than average Joe. The average Joe can barely remember the first scenario. Whereas the chess master was like, here, this scenario, there's 25 scenarios, and here they are. And he figured them all out, and he could remember them beautifully. And then they did the test again, but this time the chess pieces were all in the wrong positions, in positions that don't make sense. And the chess masters couldn't remember any more than a regular person. So basically it boiled down to pattern recognition. If you see a pattern so often, so much, it just become very familiar, and they're just so much easier to compute. That's really what it is. Now you're saying you're having, you need instructional advice. Well, find the instructor that their style resonates with you. I've trained with so many trainers, and sometimes guys would show me great stuff. It just didn't work for me. It didn't work for me. And other trainers, whatever they taught me worked. Like, it's just like their style made sense for me, and I don't know why. I don't know why. And for me, John was that guy. John's style really worked for me. Now, I have my own teaching style and my own flavor of what I do. And my whole thing is being concise and consistent. And I know I'm very similar to John, and details, insights are the most key important things, but I like to keep things short and concise. Super important, especially because I do so much more MMA. MMA, the curriculum is so vast. It's so vast. It's crazy vast. You have everything in grappling and wrestling, and then more. And the conditioning is more complicated. You have more needs. You have a variety of different needs. So I like to keep things very, very concise. And I find that keeping things simple, in my opinion, takes the athletes further. That's what I've learned over the years. Poor Hassan's been ghosted by Firas unintentionally. It's funny. Who's Hassan? Who is Hassan, guys? Okay, I'm on the hunt for Hassan. Okay, here it is. Before Islam. What did you mean when you said before Islam, it was the law of the jungle? Question mark. Didn't they have structured law before that was objective? Question mark. Is this true historically? Question mark. Is this my super chat that was missed? What? Oh, I see what you mean. I see what you mean. Not law of the jungle. I see what you mean. Okay, no, he's trying to say, I once said on this podcast that if you look at the Arab Peninsula, where Islam originated, if you look at the history before Islam, what were the Arabs like? We refer to it as, in Arabic, we refer to it as Jahiliyyah. Jahil means like time of ignorance. If I say you're Jahil, I'm calling you ignorant. You're an ignoramus. Ya Jahil, you ignorant. you ignoramus. It was the time of Jahiliyyah. Okay, so yeah, absolutely. Now you're saying law of the jungle. Okay, it wasn't. There was no government. There was no taxes. There was no law. It was kill or be killed. That's what I meant when I say law of the jungle. Yes, it is historically accurate. Look it up. There's actually a book called 3,000 Years of Arabic History. 3,000 years. And before Islam, it's just tribal wars. Okay, one war. It's the Arab Peninsula was might is right. Guys, they had no fertile lands. They have no real resources. It's just miles and miles of desert. And feuds. Constant feuds. Now, I'll tell you a non-Muslim source. Juan Cole, when he wrote a biography of Muhammad, and he says, look, when Muhammad was born, it must have seemed, this is what Juan Cole is saying, it must have seemed like the whole world was at war. He must have felt like he was in a world war. Why? Because he's saying, look, the Persians, the Romans, and the two biggest superpowers at the time were his neighbors. They were feuding, so massive amounts of wars and killing. And also Arabia, where he lived, just non-stop feuds. And they're very complicated. They're very complicated feuds. Too complicated for me to try to even attempt to explain. But it's just one tribal war after another. And these tribal wars, these tribal beefs go back like generations. So much so that the Arab race, the actual true Arabs, they come from a people called the Yarib. They don't even exist anymore. From what I understand, there's no fully Yarib people anymore. They don't even exist. So yes, it was true. Absolutely. Before Islam, there was nothing to the Arab Peninsula. For 3,000 years, there was no civilization. Now today, it's one of the most stable places in the world. So the Arab Peninsula, it's one of the most stable, safest places in the world. But that was only after the fact. Okay, what else we got here? You've been watching Lex Freeman? That's from Kerbal. No, I have not, actually. I have not at all. Coach, what's your favorite resources on mnemonics? That's from Tim. I forget. No, just kidding. That's a mnemonic joke, guys. I really like Dominic O'Donnell. And I really like the works of Ron White. Ron White actually has a program, Black Belt Memory Program. Check it out. It's really good. Ron White. Check it out. It's really, really good stuff. You could do your courses online. Denahar said Gordon Ryan's memory and recall is like no one else. That's from Jung Yo. I believe it. I've worked with Ryan Hall. Ryan Hall is also a genius when it comes to moves. Absolutely. But Gordon Ryan, Gordon Ryan is like, he's a grappling computer. It's incredible. It's incredible how much knowledge he has about jiu-jitsu. It's phenomenal. Do you believe in evolution? That's from Kadav. That's a really good question. It's a very complicated question. Well, you see, people like me, thinkers like me, philosophers like me, I'm an what we call nominalist. Okay, nominalist is kind of hard to explain. It's like we only believe in particulars. We don't believe in universals. Okay, so that's not a fancy way of saying no. I have no problem with evolution. I don't feel like I know a lot of Christian and Muslim thinkers. They think like evolution contradicts religion. I don't think so at all. I don't think so at all in any way, with shape or form. I think that's a complete misunderstanding. I don't think the classic thinkers of Islam would say to that. I don't know about the classic Christian thinkers, but for certain, the classic Muslim thinkers will not think that. Okay, I'm gonna tell you guys a little secret, and you guys should right away Google this. Okay, because natural selection was not started by Darwin. Natural selection was not started by Darwin. It was started by an African man, a black African man. Okay. And he was a Muslim guy. That's why Darwin, when he came up with natural selection, he was criticized by his peers that he's copying another Muslim writer, Al-Jahiz. Look up Al-Jahiz, Kitab al-Haywanat, the book of animals. And he was saying, he's not talking about evolution per se, but he's talking about natural selection. How animals have certain characteristics that are determined by their environment. So, the longer neck giraffes will get more leaves, therefore they'll pass on their not, they wouldn't say genetics, but their traits onto to their youth. It wasn't a radically new idea either. I mean, even the Greeks speculated that maybe amphibians made it to the earth. Like, okay, we all started off as fish. They became amphibians, frogs, turtles, whatever. And then these fish crawled up on the earth. Like, even the earliest Greek thinkers speculated on these things. So I wouldn't tell you, like, we can't say that, Darwin was the first. So I would tell you, like, there's classical thinkers that are religious and had no issue with natural selection whatsoever. Now, my issue with it is I'm a nominalist. I don't believe in anything outside of the particulars. I think that it's kind of hard to explain. I'll give it a try. Let's say, for instance, let's take nature, for instance. Okay, if I asked you what is nature, you would have to point to a tree and be like, look, that tree is part of nature. It's a part of nature. So I tell you, okay, look, let me destroy that tree. If I destroy that tree, is nature gone? You'll be like, no. That's just part of nature. There's also the grass. There's the sky. There's the clouds. There's the rain cycle. There's the sunshine. There's this river over here. There's everything. The wind is natural. All these things take part in nature. So nature is made of parts. That's what philosophers call the particulars. When I want to refer to all these particulars, I say the word nature. And then all these particulars are part of nature. Now, if I show you this mouse pad here, and I say, is this part of nature? You'll be like, no. That's man who took materials from nature and deliberately created something that's synthetic. This doesn't occur on its own. It needed manipulation of natural products by man to make something artificial. So they'll make a distinction. So to them, the particulars are referred to by this word called nature. So when they say nature, they're trying to point to this collective of things. So the particulars come first, and then you put a label on it. That's it. It's just a label. The word nature, the word evolution is just a label for particulars. Now, picture a universe where I destroy every particular. There's no trees, there's no forest, there's no leaves, there's no sunshine, there's no rainfall, there's no wind, there's no cloud. And you're just sitting there alone in the universe and you're observing nothingness. What would happen? Well, you'd have no idea of nature. Nature came after you observe the particulars. Nature is really a tricky way for us to just refer to a collective of particulars. So when you tell me, is nature real? Well, I'm saying, look, nature is just referring to these events, to these particulars. So in that sense, yes, I totally agree. But evolution is much further than that. I'd have to have an evolutionary expert in front of me, and I'd have to cross-examine him to see exactly what does he mean when he says evolution. Now, I've read books on evolution. Of course, in philosophy, we talk about evolution, even though we're not evolutionary scientists at all. Okay, we have no training in that. Our question is, how do they know this? Why do they believe it? And as a nominalist, I would tell you that evolution is not a force out there. It's not a force out there. It's just a label for events that happened in the past. That's it. It's just a label for events that happened in the past. So that's how I believe into evolution. It's just a label that refers to particular events that happened in the past. Now, do I think that we have an evolutionary force within us? No, I don't think that at all. I don't think scientists really mean that at all. I'd have to have one in front of me to cross-examine him. But I don't think there's anything in terms of a power or force. Now, evolutionary biologists will also refer to random selection. Randomness, in my opinion, doesn't exist. Also, it's another universal. It's a byproduct of human ignorance. I actually spoke about this on the Rogan show, and the internet kind of broke a little. And I got so many emails about this, and I still hold by it 100% true. It's still 100% correct. Pierre-Simon Laplace, one of the greatest thinkers in history. They call him the French Newton. The only reason you haven't heard of him is because Newton was so much more famous. But this guy was, I would say, almost equally as brilliant as Newton. But because he came 100 years later, he was completely overshadowed by Newton. But he was a brilliant human being. And he also wrote essays about why randomness and chance and all these things are just figments of the human imagination. So did Kant, so did so many other great thinkers. However, the reason why scientists believe or refer to chance as something out there in the world wrongfully is because, science and philosophy parted ways a long time ago. Originally, the Greek thinkers, they were scientists and philosophers. So they studied the world, they observed nature, and then they philosophized about it. The Arabs, or the Muslims, I should say, not the Arabs, because the Muslims weren't all Arab. They were also philosopher and scientist. Okay, they wouldn't use the term philosopher, but they would say, they would philosophize about it. The Enlightenment period, they were philosophers and they were scientists, but to a much lesser degree in the Enlightenment period, much lesser degree. And now today, you're either a philosopher or a scientist. Today, it's really separated, which I think is a huge mistake. It's a huge mistake. So that's why you have all these issues, and the dialogue between philosophers and scientists is usually almost confrontational. It's confrontational. It's like it's almost they don't want to work together. And then you have brilliant philosophers of science who write books that nobody wants to accept, especially in the scientific community. They don't want to accept. It's not popular because it's basically undermining the literal reference to laws of physics. The literal reference to laws of physics is unacceptable logically. Yeah, it's scary. But listen, I would love to have somebody who's an expert in physics or an expert in the philosophy of science to come on the show and have a discussion with me. And I guarantee you that after we look under every stone, you will see that randomness and evolution are not things out there at all. There are not physical things out there. There are metaphysical claims, and there are byproducts of the mind. I have no doubt in this. And this complicated stuff, very, very complicated stuff, and maybe not super fun to hear about, but I have no doubt in my mind because I'm not the one who invented this. I'm not the guy I'm not the genius sitting behind his desk who figured this out. It's just commonly understood in philosophy circles. It's just commonly understood. It's not something revolutionary. I haven't said anything revolutionary. When I went on a Rogan show and I talked about it, it's just like, people thought I was saying something new. No, not at all. Not at all new. Something basic. I was saying something basic, but I realized that it's not basic to people who haven't studied philosophy. They haven't, I understand, people go to university and they don't take a single philosophy course, and I can understand why. It's complicated. But I can guarantee you that evolution is not what it means in the popular sense. What people think evolution means, it does not mean that at all. At all. What people have in their imagination is completely false. And I fear that sometimes even scientists, because sometimes, I remember Lawrence Krauss, he had a debate with actually a guy who became a friend of mine. And they had this debate. It was the weirdest debate. They were talking about, does God exist? And they're going to bring this scientist here and they're going to have a discussion. And the religious guy gives his position, and then the Lawrence Krauss comes out. It doesn't answer a single thing he said, doesn't refer to anything he said, he just goes out full attack. He just goes he says all it was such a poor debate from Lawrence Krauss. He just came in with basically everything you guys believe is bad and you're completely wrong. And he insults Aristotle. Listen, he insults Aristotle, which is it just goes to show that Lawrence Krauss knows nothing about Aristotle at all. It's embarrassing, okay? Because Lawrence Krauss, his beloved science wouldn't exist, okay? Aristotle did a lot of work. Aristotle moved human knowledge forward. He was a brilliant human being. He taught us empiricism. I mean, there were greater thinkers before him. There were great thinkers before him. We just don't have them on record. Guys, you have to understand something really important. Why do we study the Greeks so much? Because the Greeks are the only stuff we have from the ancient world. That's the only thing we have. The Sumerian knowledge is lost. Egyptian knowledge is lost. There's so little record. There's so little. The first books we have are Plato and the Pre-Socratics. The Pre-Socratics, we have fragments. We only have references to them. We don't have a lot of manuscripts. Now, Plato, we have a ton of manuscripts. Yeah, we have 40 books of Plato. Aristotle, we only have notes of Aristotle. We only have the notes. We don't even have his books. He wrote books. Aristotle wrote books. We don't have access to them. Why is Nicomachean Ethics? Why is Aristotle's book on ethics called Nicomachean Ethics? It's because it's not a book that Aristotle wrote. It's notes. He had a son named Nicomachus. It's his son's notes. They discovered his son's notes that he sat down and listened to his father lecture, Aristotle, and he took down notes. That's all we have. We have Aristotle's notes. That's it. Not Aristotle's personal notes. We have some of that too, but we don't have Aristotle's books. Aristotle did so much with just notes, guys. He changed the world. And this guy, Lawrence Krauss, a modern day very popular physicist, is out there spewing all sorts of nonsense. And I'm telling you, I wish I could do a cross-examination of that. I wish if I did, I think could be fun. Just cross-examine. What is he saying? What does he mean? And why is he saying that? Anyways, later in his book, he wrote a book, and in his book he talks about something from nothing. He's trying to talk about how the universe can come from nothing. And guys, if you say that to a room of philosophers, something from nothing, it means you haven't read the basic Aristotelian works. Even the basic works you don't understand. He's trying to teach us logic. He's not doing science anymore. Guys, he's not doing science. He's left science. Science is, I have a hypothesis, I structure a controlled test, and I test my hypothesis in the real world. It could be repeatable. It could be falsified. From there, it can move to theory. It can move to fact. It can move to law. There's a scientific method, okay? And there's no exact method. There's levels of control. There's levels of how scientific something can be. It's not a perfectly cut system. There's no perfectly cut scientific method. However, there are principles to the scientific methods. They're well understood. It has to be repeatable. It has to be testable. It has to be falsifiable. It has to be based on empiricism. These are things we all understand clearly. But he leaves that arena. He's saying, look, I'm leaving this arena. I'm coming to your arena. I'm coming to the arena of logic. And he doesn't understand what the word even nothing means. He's saying, and then somebody corrects him. Some guy actually takes the book, reads it out to him, says, this doesn't make any sense. And then he goes back on his words. He's like, you're right. The word nothing should be in italic. By nothing, I don't mean nothing. Think about that. The guy's writing a book and he's saying, look, it's a mistake in my book. He realized he can't be making any sense. And he says, look, by the word nothing, I don't mean nothing. Now, in philosophy, we call that, what do we call that? False equivocation. You're using the same word twice, but the second time you use it, you mean something else. You're falsely equivocating the two words. There's more to false equivocation, but let's not get too deep on that. Like, you can use the same word twice, but the second time you use it, you mean something else with the same word. That's just like tricky wordplay, sophistry. Aristotle said it best. He was stepping over a man who was way greater than him. Lawrence Krauss was insulting Aristotle, and Aristotle is, in my opinion, in no doubt, far greater in reason and science than Lawrence Krauss. Lawrence Krauss is a smart guy, but on the stage of history, he's insignificant. And Aristotle is a giant. Aristotle told us, look, there could have never been a time where there was nothing. Think about that. Aristotle, no Hadron Collider, no fancy laboratories, no super technology. He's sitting around and he's thinking, you know what? Let me tell you guys something that's going to be true forever. There was always something. There could have never been a time. Listen. There could have never been a time where there was nothing. I'm going to say that one more time. There always was something, and there could have never been a time when there was literally nothing. Now, what does nothing mean? The absence of all quality. There is literally nothing to say. Now, why did Aristotle say that? He said, look, even if there was, let's assume that there's physical objects in the world. They would have to be, even if they were all absent, there would still be the potential. There would still be potentia. And potential is something. Since there was potential, because if there's no potential, this whole world will never be. You have to grant that premise to Aristotle. You have to say, look, there had to be potential. Even if we grant that there is a material world, there had to be potential. Potential is something. Hence, there was always something. Now, okay, I can't say the pre-Socratists didn't figure that out. For sure, Parmenides was adamant about there was always something. I'm sure the Egyptians had their opinions. I'm sure the Sumerians had their opinions. I'm sure there are many great civilizations before the Greeks that did a lot of great work. However, we don't have those writings. We don't have those. I believe the Greeks built on the Egyptians. I believe that. There's a lot of good evidence for that. But we don't have anything from pre-civilization. The ancient civilizations we have is the Greeks. That's why we always refer to the Greeks. And of course, there are other great eras, of course, but the Greeks are the first. They're the oldest as far back as we can go. That's as far back as we can go. There was always potential. Lawrence Krauss doesn't seem to get that, and that's a basic tenet in science. I don't know how he could say that. Like, I was just today helping my son with his homework, and there was a quote in his book. Antoine Lavoisier, the father of chemistry, said, look, he says, what was the quote again? He says, nothing ever came to be and nothing ever disappears. Nothing ever came to be. Listen to what he says. He says, nothing ever came to be and nothing is ever destroyed. Nothing is ever, how do they say it? Nothing is ever... Nothing's ever obliterated. And everything transforms. So basically he's saying, look, they believe in the atoms. Physicists, they believe in the atoms. The atoms is like, how do you explain the atom? The atom, the Greeks, it's a Greek word meaning indivisible. You cannot divide it anymore. You cannot break it down anymore. See this shirt? It's made up of molecules. Molecules are made up of atoms. Those atoms are made up of nothing. It stops the problem of infinite regress. Okay, if everything is made of something, you can never have this shirt. This shirt would never exist. This shirt would never exist. Think about the problem of infinite regress like this, okay? Because I know a lot of people have trouble wrapping their mind. Let's say me and you are about to race, okay? And we have the judge. He has the gun. When he fires the gun, me and you take off to race. It's a 100-meter race, okay? Now the judge, before he fires the gun, he has to go to his superior judge, racing judge, and ask him for permission. So the guy who's holding the starting pistol, before he fires, he has to ask for permission. Now his superior judge also has a superior judge. And the superior judge also has a superior judge. And the guy with the starting pistol has got to ask his superior judge for permission. And his superior judge has got to ask his superior judge for permission. And his superior judge has got to ask his superior judge for permission. And they have an infinite amount of judges to ask permission to. Are we ever going to start that race? The answer is no. That's the problem with infinite regress. Democritus said, look, there has to be an atom. An atom has to be indivisible. This thing never came to existence. It always existed. Now, I believe there's a lot of problems with this theory. I think it's outdated, etc. But this is how the Greeks were thinking. And Lavoisier is repeating that. He's saying, look, nothing is ever destroyed. Everything goes somewhere. Everything goes somewhere. You cannot see this little coaster here? This stuff here, these atoms will always exist. No matter how much you destroy it, no matter how many times it transforms, those atoms are going to be there for eternity. They never find their demise. They never break down. Yes, this will transform in a million and one things, but it'll never meet its demise. Hence, why on earth would Lawrence Krauss, who's a scientist, who should know these very basic things, say that there was a time, I must be misunderstanding him, but he didn't clarify it when he was speaking. He wasn't clarifying it. He was like poorly expressing himself. Again, I have to go by what he said at that day. I'm sure he has a more sophisticated explanation. But he's saying, look, there could have been a time where there was nothing. He later on said it should be in italics. But for me, it doesn't ring true when faced with the problem of infinite regress. There always had to be potentia. And I'll even go further than Aristotle. I would say there always had to be power. There always had to be power. And I was talking to my son about that. I was trying to explain to him what they mean by everything transforms, nothing ever meets its demise, nothing ever disappears. And I was thinking, look, let's say you wanted to create power. What's the first thing you need? Let's say you wanted to create power. The first thing you would need to create power is power. But then you have to ask yourself, where'd you get the power to create power? You need more power to create that power. It's infinite regress. If you want to create power, you'd need power. Hence, nothing created power. Power always was. This is a priori Aristotelian logic. It's, in my opinion, undeniable. And I believe that every human every civilization had thinkers that came to this exact same conclusion. They had just no other way around it. No. Do you know how the atom bomb works? It literally splits atoms. That's from Mayor Manuke. I didn't say atoms can't be split. I'm telling you what Democritus said, okay? Now, Democritus, you have to understand, this is all in his head. He didn't have a hadron collider. Listen, I think it was up until the 70s they thought the atom couldn't be split, and then they split it. Look, I've heard the atom's been split. I'm not out of the loop here. I'm not saying that what we identified as the atom is what Democritus would have accepted as the atom. Democritus did this all in his head, guys. He didn't have any technology whatsoever. There was no technology involved. This is just him sitting around thinking. Yes, the atom bomb splits atoms. That's irrelevant to Democritus. It's completely irrelevant. Democritus would say, okay, then that's not an atom. An atom literally means indivisible. Democritus would just tell you, look, you guys thought that it was the atom. You split it, therefore it can't be the atom. There's something else that can't be split. Now, guys, do I believe there's something out there that's not splittable? Like something in the material world? No, I don't believe that at all. I think materialism is a metaphysical claim. I think it's a complete contradiction. That's a topic for another day. What I'm explaining to you is how Democritus addressed the problem of infinite regress, and Lavoisier is also holding true to that. I just don't think Lavoisier believed in atoms, of course, but I don't believe atoms. If your hand was really, 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 really tiny, I don't think there's something called an atom you can grab. I personally don't believe that. Like, I think I agree more with the idealist thinkers, Heisenberg, etc., that the world around us is just information. At the end, it leads to information, not actual little indivisible atoms. Okay, now, what you refer to as atom, I don't think Democritus would accept. Democritus would say, no, if you split it, keep digging. You're not at the atom yet. Okay, so that's why I understand your confusion, because they split the atom. But remember, before they split the atom, most scientists believe it's not doable. You can't split the atom. Don't forget what the word atom literally means. String theory claims otherwise. Guys, I totally agree. Guys, please don't forget, I'm not preaching that I believe in these things called atoms. I believe they're a metaphysical claim. I believe, if you guys want to know my position, I believe that materialism, the philosophy of materialism, that everything is material and devoid, that there's this material substance out there. I think that's a metaphysical claim. I don't think it exists. Don't forget, I'm a nominalist. I don't believe in any of that. I think that's all a ghost. It's a ghost in the human mind. It doesn't exist in the way they think it is. It does. Okay. So I'm more of an idealist. I'm more of an occasionalist. I'm not a materialist philosopher at all, at all. I totally disagree with it. I argue this point to them all the time. I tell them all the time, your position is inherently contradictory. You believe that there's nothing but material in the world, but materialism is itself in itself a metaphysical claim. Ah, Austin J, rien ne se crée, ni se perd, et tout se transforme. Austin J, man, you deserve a round of applause. Thank you. He said it beautifully in French, you know. He says, rien ne se crée. Nothing is created. Rien ne se perd. Nothing is lost. And all is transformed. Okay, so the atoms are never created. They always existed. They're never lost. You could break them down. You could break molecules down. Atoms make up molecules, and molecules make us up. And you could break down the molecules. You cannot break down the atom. And everything is transformed. Okay, you take a tree, you chop it up in firewood, you burn the firewood turns to soot, it goes up in the air, it lands back on the grass, it retransforms into a new tree eventually. It gives the grounds, it nourishes the ground, and the ground nourishes a new seed, and the cycle continues, etc. Everything transforms, nothing is lost, nothing is created. This is materialism, guys. This is chemistry and physics. Everything is chemistry and physics. Now, not my point of view, but I try to represent it as best I can. They believe there's atoms in the void. And when I say atoms, I mean it in a Greek sense. Okay? How Democritus said. That there must be something that's indivisible. There must be a kernel to existence. I just want to say thank you to Austin. You are the man for that quote. Beautiful quote, by the way. Karim Mira also knew the quote beautifully. Thank you very much, guys. Very appreciated. Energy cannot be created. That's from Bu Rida. Yeah, I agree with you. No, I mean, that's a... I mean... Nothing equals no thing. That's from Kerbal. That's true. No thing. But what does it mean to have no thing? That's what I was trying to explain. No thing means there are no qualities that are perceived. You're perceiving no qualities. Very hard thing to imagine. I mean, it's unimaginable. Hey, for us, what's your opinion on the cosmological argument? That's from Giuseppe. Guys, that's a beautiful question. You know, Leibniz, I think, said it so well, man. Leibniz, okay, what's the cosmological argument? Well, let's explain it in the simplest way. I have a father. My father has a father. His father has a father. His father has a father. And his father... And what caused this whole causal chain? What caused the whole thing, man? How did we get here? How did we get here? Look at this. Wow, existence. Maybe that wasn't the best explanation, but it's just trying to give you the gist of the idea. The cosmological argument, like we were caused, and there's a causal chain that goes through existence. We've all observed it. We've all thought about it. Nobody had to ever tell you about it. You grew up when they said, I have a dad. Well, he has a dad. Well, where did he? Everybody's had this thought. Now, Leibniz said it best. Look, Leibniz said it best. He used the term contingent. What does the word contingent mean? This is a really important word. And I think most people they just either never heard of it, they never understood it. It's such an important word. What does contingent mean? See this coaster here? I'm going to make this coaster internet famous. This coaster is contingent. Why is it contingent? I'll explain to you in, I think, the best way possible. If it didn't exist, there would be no contradiction. If it did not exist, no contradiction at all. If something is a priori, necessary, that's the opposite of contingent. So you have contingent. Think about this coaster, which, if it didn't exist, doesn't break the rules of logic. It doesn't break any rules of logic. If it did not exist, nobody would care. If it was necessary, which is the opposite, it has to exist. It has to exist. If it didn't exist, it would be a contradiction. Now, let's say, for instance, I say, what's necessary? Let's say 1 + 1 = 2. I don't care if you're dreaming. I don't care if you're on another planet. I don't care if you're in a different dimension. 1 + 1 = 2. It has to be that way. If it wasn't that way, it would be a contradiction. It's not contingent. It's necessary. Necessary things, think math. Contingent things, think biology. Think biology. Biology, this is not biology, but it's a good way to think about it. It's a good analogy. Biological things, material things, they're all contingent. It wouldn't be impossible that we lived in a world where there was no coasters. It's not impossible. There's nothing logically impossible. However, it's logically impossible that we live in a world where bachelors are married. That will be logically impossible. If the word bachelor is really what it means and the word married is really what it means, if you don't change the definitions, it's a logically impossible world where bachelors are married. It's a logically impossible world. It's logically impossible. There's a logically impossible world for me to be taller than 6 feet tall and at the same time shorter than 6 feet tall. It will be logically impossible. That's a necessary truth. I'd have to be taller or shorter, or I'd have to be 6 feet tall. But being both would be logically impossible. That would be a necessary truth. Now, Leibniz said, look, the world is contingent. It's not necessarily logically true. There's nothing contradictory about the fact that if existence didn't exist, there would be nothing contradictory about that. Nothing. The world didn't have to exist. Hence, it's contingent. Hence, there's an explanation for it. Now, here's another thing very important. All contingent things, think material, biology, have an explanation. Now, you might not know the explanation. I might not know the explanation. But it has one. There's something that explains the existence of this coaster. How it came to be, what caused it. It has a whole spiel. It has a whole history. It has a whole background. You might not know it. I might not know it. We might never find out what it is. But it's still, we know it has one. Why? That's the definition of contingent things. Contingent things are contingent on something else. They're not necessary. Leibniz thought long and hard and he said, what could have started it all? And he came to the conclusion, there's only one thing. There's only one thing that's necessary that could have started it all. And it's the cosmological argument. He says, look, there's many versions of the cosmological argument. This is Leibniz's version. He says, look, try to rack your brain. Try to think of every possibility. Any answer you come up with it's self-contingent, hence it needs something to create it. He said, look, there's only one possible answer. Guys, don't forget, Leibniz is one of the greatest intellectuals in history. One of the greatest. And he said, look, it can only be God. That's it. Because you wouldn't say, hey, who created God? Because that would mean he's not a God. By definition, God doesn't need to be created. It's incredible to me that Richard Dawkins, it's incredible to me that one of the central arguments in his book, he's a new age atheist, supposedly brilliant. Guys, he's a dumb son of a bitch. I'm sorry to tell you guys. I hate to say it that way. But he is one uneducated. Not in science. I know he's a biologist or he's a journalist, but when it comes to logic, he did not even read the basics of the cosmological argument. He did not even read the basics. And he wrote a best-selling book. This is what boggles my mind. He wrote a best-selling book. There are great thinkers out there writing really, really good books, and they never make any money. Nobody ever remembers them. Nobody ever knows their name. But this guy wrote a book and said, well, if you're going to say God is the beginning of all causes, then who created God? That's even more complicated. And this is a central theme in his book. Guys, I got to tell you something. What I'm about to say now, everybody agrees in the 2,500 years of logical thinking, philosophy we have. Everybody agrees to what I'm about to say. If God exists, he doesn't need to be created. By definition, Remember we said a priori. A priori means I have prior knowledge. I have knowledge before you even tell me. Like I know the answer. The answer is in the information. I'm telling you that if God exists, you wouldn't ask, well, who created God? That would be a moot. That would be a nonsensical question, because if he had a creator, he wouldn't be a God. When we say God, it's a tautology in the sense that we're telling you he's uncreated. The word God means uncreated. Literally, the word God means uncreated. Literally. But this is a central theme in his book. And I remember he has a debate with John Lennox, who's a philosopher and a mathematician. And he's like, look, this is absurd. Like, nobody says that. Like if you're going to write about a topic, you think like, okay, let me see who else wrote about it. Let me do my due diligence, read different opinions, and kind of formulate my own. And when I agree with somebody, I'll credit them. That's the proper way to write a book. You read on the topic, you study the topic, you think about the topic, you write notes, you study, you reflect, you come up with a new idea, and then you refer to your journey, how you came up to this new idea, how you're going to contribute, and who are the people who influenced you, and where you got your ideas from. And that's how you that's how you write a proper book. This guy, no. Like, you know what? Let me go back to school logic, like grade school logic. Oh, well, if God created the first element of the causal chain, then who created God? Like, this is like, it's incredible. Honestly, it's incredible. But the guy made millions off this book. Millions. Completely right about Richard Dawkins. Oh, thank you. Super chat. That's from Alejandro. Okay, I missed the super chat. Okay, Alejandro says, your opinion, kids doing MMA, no more specialists. Yeah, I like kids doing MMA, just no blows to the head. Alejandro, no blows to the head. Like, do like Kyokushin, like karate. You know, they hit to the body. That's fine. Kicking to the leg. Teach kids to wrestle. Teach kids to do jiu-jitsu. Yeah, there's no more specialists. They'll be even far greater. They'll be even far greater than today's martial artists. Believe me. It's insane, coach. You could get a university student to talk to him and he'd be completely lost. That's from Adam. I assume you're referring to Richard Dawkins. Yeah, I think so. Honestly, Richard Dawkins, look, he's an intelligent guy. If you give him an IQ test, he's intelligent. He's just so biased. He hates religion so much that he's ready to say anything negative. If there's any attack he can find, he's going to do it. He's not really, I don't feel he's really there to learn and exchange ideas. Like, he doesn't have an open mind. He's not there to follow the logical argument to its end. He's there to push what he believes, because in his mind, bad things came from religion, therefore religion is bad, and it's a very, very outdated way of thinking. Honestly, it's so dumb the way he's thinking. Look, the most violent people in history, many of them were atheists. Many of them were atheists. Many of them were religious. It has nothing to do. First of all, if tomorrow everybody becomes atheist, let me tell you something. If tomorrow everybody becomes atheist, the natural progression, and you guys can disagree with me, but I'm telling you, you're wrong. The natural progression is to later on say, look, there's no such thing as morality. Might is right. Who cares if I drown you and take your women? Who cares if I kill you? It's good for me. It's not bad for me. What's the big deal? I get more resources. I get more women. I get more gold, more power, more pleasure, more everything. What's the point? When I die, there's no repercussion. What's the point? Why would I care about you? Why would I care about you? Who cares? If we have a friendship, it's for my benefit. I'm using this friendship for some kind of benefit. There's no true morality. That's the dark side. That eventually, if you go deep down this philosophy, you're going to find nihilism, and you're going to find a might is right philosophy. There's no other path. Now, if God exists, morality is real. Yeah, you could do all sorts of bad things, but there's a price to pay. So in the end, I honestly don't think because I remember him saying, oh no, we shouldn't live by Darwinian principles. Why not? Why not? That's what you observed. Why not? Because of your displeasure with it, because you find it unappealing, or is it because you're not the biggest and strongest? Well, what about the guy who's sitting on top of the hill? He's going to be like, hey, wait a second. Why don't I just crush your little neck? Take everything you have. What's so illogical about me taking what you have? What's so illogical if nobody could stop me from doing it? I am the law here. I am the king. I am the ruler. I am the top. Who cares what you want? That's, in my opinion, the unavoidable. Guys, when Darwin wrote his book, do you think he influenced a guy named Adolf Hitler by any means? Mao, Stalin? Yeah, of course. Of course, they were heavily influenced by this thinking. All of Mein Kampf is a reference to Darwin. Most of Mein Kampf is a reference to Darwin. Violence is natural. So we have to struggle. We have to struggle our way and get to the top. If it's not us to survive, it's them. It's a struggle for resources. It's a struggle for superiority. Look at the world today. We don't think like that. Today we think, hey, mutual gain, mutual benefit, cooperation. It's far superior. Far superior. All right, guys. I'm gonna end up with one last question. What time is it now? 1:47 a.m. for me. Wow. I got practice tomorrow morning. Let's do one more. One more question. End it on a light note. Super chat. Anthony Pham. Thoughts on Stoicism. Stoicism is there's a lot of benefit in Stoicism. Absolutely. Very interesting philosophy. I've done quite a bit of study and reading in Stoicism. Lots to learn from them. Yes. Scott Curry. Thank you, my friend. And yeah, well, no, he's asking. He visited a mosque. Absolutely love the people. Is there an English version? Well, they'll give you a sermon in English. You know, anywhere you go in the world, there's going to be various languages of sermon. But for the prayer, no, you'd have to get a translation. You'd have to look it up. What else we got here? Diogenes the dog. Tyler loves Diogenes. You know, guys, who Diogenes the dog is? We have very limited material on Diogenes, but Diogenes is a guy in ancient Greece who would walk around with a lantern. He walking around for a lantern because he was looking for one honest man, and he says he couldn't find a single honest man. He was a very crude guy, to say the least. He would masturbate in public. He would insult people. He'd walk around naked. He was a minimalist. He was very dirty. They said all he owned was a bowl. He was, he's referred to, in passing quite a bit. And supposedly, he thought the world was just full of bad people. He thought the whole world is just dishonest, sneaky. They called him the dog. Diogenes the dog because he was a filthy dog. He lived in the street. He was homeless. He was very hostile to people. He was just a cutthroat, kind of a sideshow. He was the kind of the Greek sideshow. He absolutely thought that it was a kill or be killed world. There was no good or honest person in the world. Very pessimistic guy. Probably even more so than Schopenhauer. And he was just a byproduct of nihilism. He's just a total byproduct of nihilism. There's nothing good in the world. He's just like some of the people I grew up with. That's from our height. Oh, our height, you had an interesting neighborhood, let me tell you. Tony R. Coach, are you familiar with philosophy of mathematics? Question mark. Not every philosopher of mathematics believes 1 plus 1 equals 2. For example, I don't believe it. Well, I have heard this. Look, I know. Listen, I doubt mathematics. I do. Absolutely. I doubt mathematics. I do. What can I say? I don't know if mathematics is just something in our heads or if it's out there in the real world. I don't. Gödel's theorem, he supposedly, and I've had many PhDs in mathematics confirm this to me. They say, look, he basically proves that it's not a perfect system. Math is not a perfect system. I cannot understand it. They have had it explained to me. I just personally don't understand it. But they say, look, he showed us that math is flawed. Now, I have other reasons for believing why math is flawed, but that's only because it's a category of the mind. Is it out there in the real world? I have no evidence of that. Philosophers, we can't seem to find evidence of that. I'll just give you a famous quote by Bernard Shaw. Bertrand Russell. I don't know why I said Bernard Shaw. Bertrand Russell said, look, he said, let me try to remember exactly how he said it. He said, look, mathematics is like saying a four-legged animal is an animal. He goes, I used to think, this is Bertrand Russell, a very famous atheist. He said, look, I used to think that mathematics was perfect knowledge. But to the trained mind, mathematics is like saying a four-legged animal is an animal. Meaning, when you said four-legged animal, it means animal. Like you didn't tell me anything new. I believe, like Bertrand Russell, you've realized, that mathematics is just a tautology. There's nothing new. And every time you think you've added up numbers and they came to a conclusion, that conclusion was always there. It was just our inability to see it. That's it. It was always there. Nothing has changed in the world. It's only our inability to see it. Nothing has changed. So it's a personal, internal experience. But more than that, Gödel seems to have proven that even that system itself is flawed. So I believe it was flawed like Bertrand Russell. It's just a tautology. What's a tautology? No new information has been learned. It's just our inability to see it in the first place. That's it. 1 + 1, another way to think about it is 2. Doesn't really equal 2. It's just another way to think about it. We just, as young kids, weren't able to figure that out. So as we figure it out, we think we learned something. But really, all that activity was just internal. The world hasn't changed. Nothing has changed in the world. You haven't affected the world in the least. But Gödel seems to have gone further than that. Gödel seems to have shown that the whole mathematical system is actually inconsistent. Now, how did he do that? I'm not sure. I've had it explained to me. I can't say that I understand it, but I do look forward to one day studying it even more and actually realizing exactly what he meant by that, because it's something I find fascinating. But I personally have I'm more on the Bertrand Russell side. I just think it's a tautology. It doesn't actually say anything about the world. But I do agree with you that many convincing mathematicians have said many contradictory things. Like some mathematicians don't believe there's infinite numbers. They believe that there's a number that's maximum. You can't go higher. When you ask them what it is, they say, we don't know, but it can't be otherwise. Because infinity is ludicrous. Infinity is a very interesting topic, but I think we won't get in it today because it'll be way too long. Keep counting and find out. Darius, that's great. Darius, I want you to keep counting till the next episode and then let me know what the highest number was. Guys, it was fun. It was a pleasure. I hope you guys had as much fun as I did. And I'll see you all in the next episode. Thank you.